If you are listening to my voice right now, I want you to understand something with absolute clarity. There is a line that separates those who live lives of quiet frustration from those who rise into power, purpose, and lasting success. And that line is drawn by consistency, not talent, not luck, not timing, but consistency. You have been led to believe that greatness is born in heroic moments, in flashes of inspiration, in sudden breakthroughs where everything finally clicks. But that is not where true greatness is formed. Greatness is carved in the quiet, in the ordinary, in the repetition that no one applauds. It is not the man who burns brightly for a moment who shapes his destiny. It is the man who returns again and again to the right actions, the right disciplines, and the right standards, long after the feeling has faded. Think for a moment about any area of your life where you have suffered. It may be your finances, your health, your relationships, your skill, your emotional control. If you look closely, you will see that the problem is almost never that you never tried. The problem is that you did not persist. You started and stopped. You made promises you did not keep. You lived from spurts of intensity instead of a steady rhythm of execution. You are not suffering from a lack of effort in single moments. You are suffering from a lack of consistent effort across many moments. That is why consistency is the backbone of greatness. Backbone is what holds the body upright. Remove it, and everything collapses. In the same way, you can fill your life with ideas, dreams, emotions, and plans. But without consistency, they will all collapse under the weight of reality. Success is not built in emotional explosions. It is built in logical arrangements of repeated actions, day after day, decision after decision, habit after habit. You are casting votes for the person you will ultimately become. The tragedy is that most people vote for greatness with their words and for weakness with their routines. They talk like kings and live like drifters. And then they wonder why their life does not rise. Consistency corrects this contradiction. It forces your daily behavior to line up with your stated desires. It demands that your feet move in the same direction as your mouth. When you become consistent, you are saying to life, I am no longer available for this divided existence where I dream one way and act another. Consider the illusions the world sells you. Everywhere you look, you are shown the highlight moments, the promotion, the transformation, the victory. What you are rarely shown are the mornings when that person did not want to get up but did. The evenings when they wanted to escape but chose to prepare. The countless days when nothing exciting happened yet they still executed. The world glorifies the fruit and ignores the root. Consistency is the root. It is what allows small, unimpressive efforts to compound into extraordinary results. A single workout will not change your body. A single focused day will not build your career. A single honest conversation will not heal a broken relationship. But when you repeat the right action again and again, you give nature time to reward you. You must train your mind to respect the law of accumulation. Every time you show up, even on a day when your performance is not perfect, you add another brick to the structure of your future. Some bricks are laid straight and strong. Some are a little crooked. That is fine. The wall is not built by one perfect brick. It is built by the refusal to stop laying them. That is why you must stop expecting perfection from yourself and start demanding consistency. Perfection is a trap. It convinces you that if you cannot do it flawlessly, it is not worth doing. Consistency is liberation. It whispers that even a small, imperfect action taken again and again is more powerful than a grand plan you never implement. Missing one day is not the issue. You are human. Life will interrupt you. You will be sick, tired, interrupted, or overwhelmed. The danger is not in the single missed day. The danger is in the story you attach to it. When you miss one day and say, I have failed, so it no longer matters, you are using a momentary setback as an excuse to abandon your identity. A consistent person sees a missed day as a signal, not a sentence. He returns the next day. He repairs the break. He protects the streak. He understands that what matters is not never falling, but never accepting a fall as a final state. When you adopt consistency as a non-negotiable standard, you are doing something far more profound than building a habit. You are building a self who can be trusted. Think of how many times in your life you have said, "This time I am serious. This time I will change. This time I will follow through," only to abandon your commitment in a matter of days or weeks. Each time you do that, you erode your own belief in yourself. You teach your subconscious that your word is weak. Then, even when you want to believe, a quiet voice inside says, "We have heard this before." Consistency heals that fracture. Every day that you keep your word to yourself, even in small acts, you are sending a new message inward. I am someone who does what I say. Over time, that becomes your backbone. You stand taller inside. You no longer need the approval of others to feel strong, because your strength comes from living in alignment with your own standards. There is another reason consistency is the backbone of greatness. It protects you from the tyranny of emotion. Feelings are valuable, but they are unstable. They rise and fall with sleep, food, weather, news, opinions, and memories. If you base your progress on feeling ready, feeling inspired, or feeling confident, you will always be unstable. Consistency breaks that cycle. It says, "My actions are rooted in my purpose, not in my mood." You build a schedule that reflects your values, and then you obey that schedule more than you obey your feelings. In doing this, you reclaim control. Life will still be chaotic on the outside, but your inner world becomes predictable. You know how you will respond when temptation appears, because you have already decided. You know what you will do each morning, because you have already planned it. That predictability is not boredom. It is power. It is the structure that allows you to carry heavy responsibilities without collapsing. Think of an athlete who trains daily, not just when the crowd is watching, or a craftsman who practices his skill for decades. Their consistency gives them a baseline performance that is far above the average person's best day. Greatness is not about how high you can jump in a rare moment of inspiration. It is about how high your minimum level becomes after years of disciplined repetition. The backbone of greatness is not that peak performance you hit once. It is the elevated standard you hold every day. That is why, as this message continues in later parts to speak about identity, purpose, structure, and momentum, it all rests on this foundation. Identity without consistency is fantasy. Purpose without consistency is frustration. Plans without consistency are decoration. Momentum without consistency is impossible. Character without consistency is illusion. Consistency weaves through them all. Now, you may say, "But my life is complicated. My responsibilities are heavy. My environment is messy." Understand that consistency does not require perfection of circumstances. It requires commitment in spite of circumstances. The man who waits for the perfect environment will wait his entire life. The man who becomes great is the one who says, "These are my realities, and within them, I will still maintain my rhythm." 10 minutes of reading when you cannot do an hour is still consistency. A short workout when you cannot do a long one is still consistency. A small step toward your business when you cannot take a giant leap is still consistency. The backbone is strengthened by the act of showing up, not by the size of the action. Finally, recognize this. Consistency is not only about what you achieve. It is about who you become while you are achieving. Greatness is not simply reaching a destination. It is transforming into the kind of person who can handle that destination without crumbling. Wealth without character destroys. Status without stability corrupts. Power without discipline ruins. Consistency shapes you into someone who can be trusted with more. More influence, more opportunity, more responsibility, When you are consistent, you prove to life, to others, and to yourself that you are ready for the next level. This is why, in the rest of this message, when we speak about building identity, clarifying purpose, designing your days, mastering emotion, and carrying momentum across seasons, we will return again and again to this central truth. Nothing will work for you if you do not work it consistently. Make this your starting point. Make this your backbone. Decide that, from this day forward, you will no longer live as a creature of impulse, but as a builder of rhythm. You will no longer define yourself by what you occasionally attempt, but by what you faithfully repeat. Then, as you move into the next parts of this journey, you will find that everything else we discuss rests securely on this unshakable foundation. If consistency is the backbone of greatness, then identity and purpose are the roots that feed that backbone with strength. Without them, you may push yourself for a while, but sooner or later your effort will collapse under confusion. You can force yourself to act for a season, but you cannot force yourself forever against who you believe you are. That is why so many people start strong and fade. They try to build new habits on top of an old identity. They say they want change, but deep down, they still see themselves as the same person who quits, the same person who drifts, the same person who never quite finishes what he starts. Until you change that image, your consistency will always be temporary. Your behavior will always obey your deepest belief about yourself. So the first great question is not what do you want to do, but who do you believe you are? Identity is the quiet story you tell yourself about yourself. It is the answer you give when no one is listening, and you ask, what kind of man am I? What kind of woman am I? You might never speak it out loud, but it is there, shaping your choices. If your inner story says, I am someone who never sticks with anything, then no matter how many times you say you will be consistent, your behavior will eventually bend back to match that story. If your inner story says, I am always behind, always unlucky, always overwhelmed, then even when opportunity appears, you will sabotage it because it does not fit the person you believe yourself to be. The mind is loyal to identity. It will fight to keep you aligned with the image you hold. This is why some people fear success more than failure. Failure feels familiar. It matches the old identity. Success would require them to become someone they have never been before. That can feel dangerous to a mind that is attached to its old story. You must see this clearly, because if you do not, you will spend your life trying new methods without ever altering the person using them. So, how do you change identity in a way that supports consistency? You do not simply sit and hope. Identity is not transformed by wishful thinking. It is changed through a conscious partnership between decision and repetition. There is a moment where you decide who you must be, and there is a long season where you prove it with action. First, you decide. You choose a new standard for yourself. You say, I am no longer the person who quits when it is hard. I am no longer the person who speaks big and lives small. I am the person who honors his word. I am the person who finishes what he starts. This decision is not magic, but it is essential. Without a clear declaration, the old identity holds the throne by default. Once you have decided, you move to the second part, which is repetition. Every time you act in alignment with this new identity, you carve it deeper into your nervous system. When you do the workout you promised yourself, you are not just training your muscles, you are training your identity. When you sit down to work during the hours you committed to, you are not just moving a project forward, you are moving your sense of self forward. Each small, consistent act is like striking a hammer against the old statue of who you used to be, until one day you realize it has been reshaped. You are no longer trying to become the person who follows through. You simply are that person. Now, let us turn to purpose. Because identity without purpose becomes self-obsession, and purpose without identity becomes vague fantasy. You cannot be consistent with anything until you are truly committed to something. Many people are not inconsistent because they are lazy. They are inconsistent because they are aimless. They are moving, but they are not directed. They wake up and work, but they do not know what they are ultimately building. Without a definite purpose, the grind feels empty. The repetition feels meaningless. And any difficulty becomes an argument to quit. Purpose is the answer to the question, why should I keep going when I no longer feel like it? When you have no compelling answer, your consistency dies at the first sign of resistance. Purpose is not a slogan you write once in a notebook and forget. It is the deep conviction about what your life is supposed to stand for. It is the clear picture of the kind of human being you must become and the kind of work you must do for your days to feel well spent. It may be tied to your career, your family, your service, your faith, your craft, or all of them together. But it must be honest. If your purpose is only to impress others, it will crumble. If your purpose is only to escape discomfort, it will vanish when life becomes hard. Real purpose sits deeper. It touches the part of you that knows you were not born just to consume, complain, and die with your potential unused. Take a moment and ask a different question from the one the world usually asks you. Instead of asking, what can I get from life? Ask, what must I give through my life? Who must I become so that my existence is not wasted? What kind of strength, wisdom, discipline, and love must I build so that my presence on this earth leaves things better than I found them? When you answer that honestly, you begin to discover purpose. And once you have even a rough sense of that purpose, consistency stops feeling like punishment and begins to feel like alignment. Waking up early is no longer just about beating the alarm. It is about stepping into the role you have chosen. Saying no to distraction is no longer just about self-denial. It is about protecting the mission you are on. Every repeated action becomes a way of saying, this is what my life is about. Identity and purpose are deeply connected. Your sense of self answers the question, who am I? Your purpose answers the question, what am I for? When those two are aligned, consistent action becomes far easier. If you see yourself as a leader, and your purpose is to build a business that serves others with excellence, then the disciplines required to grow that business feel natural. They fit who you are and what you are for. But imagine the opposite. Imagine someone who secretly sees himself as a victim, helpless and powerless, yet tries to pursue a purpose that requires courage and initiative. His actions will be constantly sabotaged by his internal narrative. Or imagine someone whose identity is built on being liked today, but whose purpose would require him to make unpopular decisions for a greater future. His consistency will break as soon as other people disapprove. To build true consistency, you must get your identity and your purpose on the same side. You must become the kind of person who is willing to pay the price for the kind of life you say you want. This is why in the earlier part of our journey we insisted that consistency is the backbone of greatness. Now you can see that identity and purpose are the roots feeding that backbone. They determine whether your consistency will be a temporary burst or a lifelong rhythm. When you know who you are and what you are here to do, you can endure seasons that would break someone who is living only for comfort or approval. A person without purpose asks, why is this so hard? A person with purpose asks, how can I grow strong enough to carry this? A person without a strong identity says, I cannot handle this responsibility. A person whose identity has been forged through consistent action says, I was built for this. To make this practical, begin by naming your current identity honestly, not the identity you present on social media, the one you live by when no one is looking. Are you someone who constantly negotiates with your commitments? Are you someone who gives up your own goals the moment someone else demands your time? Are you someone who escapes into distraction when work becomes uncomfortable? Do not judge yourself. Simply tell the truth. Because you cannot change a story you refuse to admit you are telling. Once you have described your current identity, write down the identity you must adopt to live the life you want. Perhaps it sounds like this. I am a disciplined builder. I am a man of my word. I am a woman who finishes what she starts. I am someone who does difficult things daily in service of my future. Then, look at your purpose. Write it simply. My purpose is to build a strong, honest life for my family. My purpose is to master my craft and use it to serve others excellently. My purpose is to become a person of such inner strength that my presence lifts those around me. Clarity does not need fancy language. It needs sincerity. From this new identity and purpose, the consistent actions we will speak about in the next parts naturally arise. When you know that your purpose requires a clear mind, daily reading becomes obvious. When you know that your purpose requires physical stamina, exercise becomes non-negotiable. When you know that your purpose requires financial stability, budgeting and focused work become acts of duty rather than chores. You are no longer asking, "Do I want to do this?" You are asking, "Does this match who I am and what I am for?" And if it does, you move. Identity and purpose are not things you figure out once and never revisit. They deepen as you grow, but even at your current level, you have enough insight to make decisions. Do not wait for a perfect statement of purpose before you act. Choose the best understanding you have now and begin to live consistently with it. As you do, your understanding will refine. Your sense of self will strengthen. Your purpose will clarify. That is the logic of this entire message. Consistency shapes identity, and identity sustains consistency. Purpose gives you a reason to endure, and endurance builds the character worthy of your purpose. All of this works together. In the next part of this journey, when we move into habits, structure, and the daily rhythm of success, remember what you are building on. The routines will matter. The schedules will matter. The strategies will matter. But they will only stand if they are rooted in a clear sense of who you are choosing to be and what you are willing to live for. Begin there. Decide the kind of person you must become. Decide the purpose that makes your struggle meaningful. Then let every act of consistency be a living sentence in the story of that new life you are writing. Now that you understand why consistency is the backbone of greatness and why identity and purpose are the roots that feed it, we must confront the place where all of that becomes real or remains theory. Your daily life, not your dreams, not your best intentions, but your hours. Because no matter what you say you want, you only build your future with what you do repeatedly. And what you do repeatedly is controlled by your habits, your structure, and the rhythm of your days. If your days are chaotic, your results will be chaotic. If your days are reactive, your life will be reactive. If your days are unplanned, your growth will be accidental at best and backward at worst. So in this part of our journey, I want to pull your attention away from vague hopes and bring it to the ground level where change actually happens. Where consistency lives or dies, the patterns of your morning, the flow of your afternoon, the discipline of your evening, and the way you design, protect, and govern your time. Understand this. Greatness is not built in grand occasions. It is produced by ordinary days, arranged with extraordinary intention. Most people waste their days not because they are evil or stupid, but because their days have no structure. They wake when they feel like it. They eat whatever is convenient. They respond to whoever shouts the loudest. They allow every message, every notification, every whim to pull their attention. Then, at the end of the day, they are surprised to discover they made no real progress toward anything that matters. That is not a mystery. That is the inevitable result of a day without design. If your schedule is not built around your purpose, it will be built around other people's priorities. If your habits are not chosen, they will be inherited from your past, your environment, and your impulses. You cannot drift into a powerful life. You must structure one. Let us begin with a simple truth. Your day must have a spine. Just as your body stands upright because of a backbone, your day stands upright because of a small number of non-negotiable habits that anchor it. These are not 25 things thrown on a to-do list. These are 3 to 5 core behaviors that you repeat almost every single day because they are directly tied to your identity and purpose. The specifics will vary from person to person, but the principle does not change. For some, that spine may be early rising, physical training, focused work on a main project, and a nightly review. For others, it may be quiet time to think and plan, deep work on a craft or business, time with family, and a habit of learning. The point is that these habits are not optional decorations. They are the pillars around which everything else must be arranged. You do not ask, "Do I feel like doing them?" You ask, "How will I protect them?" The first pillar of your daily rhythm is your morning. The way you begin your day is not everything, but it influences everything. Most people start their day in a state of reaction. The alarm goes off, and their first act is to negotiate with themselves. Then they grab their phone and invite the world into their mind before they have even taken control of their own thoughts. They are answering messages, scrolling, consuming the noise of other people's lives before they have even asked what kind of life they are supposed to be building today. If this describes you, then understand that you are surrendering the throne of your mind before the day has even begun. A man or woman of consistency cannot allow that. Your morning must be designed as a statement of who you are and what you are for. It does not need to be complicated. It does need to be deliberate. When you wake, your first action should affirm your identity, not your impulses. That might mean getting out of bed on the first alarm as a symbol that your decisions govern your feelings, not the other way around. It might mean a few minutes of silence, prayer, or reflection, where you reconnect with your purpose so that you remember why the day matters. It might mean reading a page or two of something that sharpens your thinking, instead of flooding your mind with random information. It might mean going straight into physical movement to wake up your body and signal to yourself that you are a person of action, not inertia. What matters is not performing some trendy ritual for appearances, but building a morning rhythm that consistently points you toward your highest self. Even 10 or 15 minutes of structured intention in the morning can separate you from the masses who begin their day in confusion. That small daily separation, over years, becomes a vast distance in results. From there, we move into the core of your day, the hours where most of your productive energy should be spent. This is where structure becomes critical. Many people say they do not have time to build their dream, but what they lack is not time. It priority. They allow their most focused hours to be eaten by trivial tasks, mindless communication, and distractions that produce no meaningful return. A person who is serious about consistent success does not treat all hours as equal. He identifies his peak focus windows and reserves them for his most important work. That might be building a business, studying a difficult subject, practicing a craft, or solving complex problems. Whatever it is, those hours are blocked and protected, phone on silent, notifications off, door closed if possible. The world does not get unrestricted access to your attention. You are not a public highway for other people's urgencies. You are a builder with a project that requires deep concentration. Think of your day in blocks rather than in scattered minutes. Have a block for deep work, a block for communication, a block for administrative tasks, a block where you allow interruption and collaboration. When you enter a block, you know the purpose of that time. You are not half working, half checking messages, half daydreaming. You are doing one thing fully. This focus structure is how you multiply the power of your hours. 1 hour of undistracted work is worth more than 4 hours of scattered effort. And remember the law from the original transcript. Success is not in trying everything. It is in doing the right things long enough to see them work. Structure helps you keep doing those right things instead of letting every day drift back into random activity. Your habits are the vehicles that carry your identity through your structure. A habit is simply a behavior you have repeated so often that it requires less and less energy to perform. It moves from conscious effort to automatic execution. At first, building a new habit feels heavy. You have to fight resistance every time. But as the habit strengthens, the energy required decreases. Eventually, it feels strange not to perform it. This is why habits are such powerful allies for consistency. Without habits, every day feels like a fresh battle. With habits, much of your day runs on rails you have laid in advance. The key is to choose those rails wisely. To build powerful habits, start small and attach them to anchors that already exist in your day. If you want to think clearly, you might create a habit of spending 5 minutes planning your priorities right after you finish your morning coffee. If you want to improve your health, you might build a habit of walking for 10 minutes immediately after lunch. If you want to study, you might decide that the first 20 minutes after sitting at your desk are always reserved for learning before you open email or messages. These small, strategically placed habits create a rhythm. You are no longer asking yourself 1,000 times a day, "What should I do now?" Your day begins to answer that question for you because you have designed it in advance. Another critical element is the nightly review. Many people end their day the way they start it, in distraction. They collapse into entertainment until they are too tired and then fall asleep without reflection. A person who understands the daily rhythm of success ends the day differently. At night, even for a few minutes, he looks back over the day with honesty, not with self-hatred, but with seriousness. He asks, "What did I do today that was aligned with my identity and purpose? Where did I break my own standards? What small adjustments must I make tomorrow?" He might rewrite his top 3 priorities for the next day. Based on what did and did not get done, he might note a habit that slipped and decide exactly when he will reinforce it again. This nightly review is like a captain checking his course. It prevents small deviations from becoming massive detours. There is a deeper reason why structure and rhythm matter, beyond mere productivity. Your schedule is a mirror of what you truly value. You can say that family matters, but if there is never any protected time for them, your schedule tells the truth. You can say that health matters, but if your day contains no time for movement, rest, or proper fuel, your schedule tells the truth. You can say that building your future matters, but if your calendar is filled only with entertainment and reaction, your schedule tells the truth. The daily rhythm of success forces you to align your time with your stated values. It turns vague wishes into concrete blocks of behavior. It exposes what you really worship, and if you do not like what it reveals, you are being given a gift, the opportunity to redesign it now. You may object and say, "My life is not simple. I have children, a job, responsibilities I cannot control." That is understood. This message is not about living a perfect, rigidly controlled life. It is about extracting as much intentionality as you can from the reality you have. Even in a busy life, there are pockets of time that can be reclaimed. Even in a demanding job, there are choices about what you do first and how you protect certain blocks. Even with a family, there are ways to design shared routines that build discipline and connection rather than constant chaos. The point is not to copy someone else's schedule. The point is to look at your own and ask, where can I introduce structure that serves my purpose? Where can I create small, repeatable habits that move me forward? We must also address the role of environment, because your structure does not exist in thin air. The spaces you occupy, the tools you use, and the cues that surround you all influence your daily rhythm. If your workspace is filled with clutter, your mind will mirror that confusion. If your phone is always within reach, constantly pinging, you are inviting interruption into your most valuable hours. If your home is arranged in a way that makes bad habits easy and good habits difficult, you are fighting unnecessary battles. Structure is not just about time. It is about design. Put things in your environment that support the person you are becoming. Remove things that constantly pull you back into the person you are leaving behind. Keep the book you need to read visible. Place your workout clothes where you will see them. Clear your desk at the end of each day so that tomorrow begins with order, not chaos. These details may seem small, but remember, consistency multiplies small into significant. Another key to the daily rhythm of success is separating planning from performing. Many people waste their most energetic hours deciding what to do instead of doing it. They start the day without a clear plan, then spend half of it reacting, rearranging, and thinking about what they should have done. The disciplined individual plans at a different time than he executes. He might plan his day the night before, during his review, or in a short morning session before the world demands his attention. He writes down his top priorities, not 100 minor tasks, but the few actions that, if completed, will move the mission forward. Then, when the time comes to work, he does not wander. He follows the plan. This separation protects your focus. It allows your working hours to be used for work, not constant decision-making. And yet, even the best structure and habits will face resistance. There will be days when everything that can go wrong does go wrong. Your rhythm is disrupted. Your schedule is broken. In those moments, you must remember the principle we set earlier in this journey. Consistency is not perfection. It is persistence. On a disrupted day, you may not be able to perform every habit exactly the way you planned, but you can almost always do something. You may not get your full workout. You can still do a shortened version. You may not have 2 hours for deep work. You can still give 30 minutes. You may not have ideal conditions, but you can still choose a small act that aligns with your identity and purpose. Those are the decisions that keep your rhythm alive. They are a statement to yourself that you are not ruled by circumstances. You adapt the structure, but you keep the commitment. Let us bring this together. In the first part of this message, we established that consistency is the backbone of greatness. Then we went to the root and saw that identity and purpose determine whether that backbone can stand. Now, in this part, we have laid out the skeleton of your daily life, your morning anchors, your deep work blocks, your supportive habits, your nightly review, your environment, and your planning. All of these are simply tools to help you live in alignment with who you say you are and what you say you are here to do. None of them are meant to impress anyone. They are meant to free you. They free you from waking up in confusion. They free you from relying on motivation. They free you from the constant stress of living by reaction. They give your days a rhythm. And that rhythm, over time, writes the story of your life. As we move into the next phase of this journey, where we will deal more directly with emotion, distraction, and resistance, remember that feelings follow rhythm. When your days are erratic, your emotions will be erratic. When your days are structured around your purpose, your emotions, though they may rise and fall, will no longer dictate your direction. You will have something stronger carrying you forward, a set of habits, a structure, and a daily rhythm designed on purpose and defended with discipline. That is how you bridge the gap between who you are and who you can become. Not in one giant leap, but in thousands of intentional, rhythmic steps taken one ordinary day at a time. Before we continue, I want to pause for just a brief moment and speak directly to you. If the message you've heard so far is awakening something within you, if it is clarifying what has been hidden, strengthening what has been weak, or reminding you of the greatness you have forgotten, then I want to invite you to stay connected. This channel is built for people who refuse to drift, who refuse to settle, who want to master themselves at the deepest levels. So, if you find value here and you desire guidance that pushes you forward on your journey of discipline, purpose, and growth, feel free to subscribe. It keeps you aligned with this path, and it allows me to keep creating messages that support your evolution. Now, let us continue. Up to this point, we have spoken of consistency as the backbone of greatness, identity and purpose as the roots that feed it, and habits and structure as the daily rhythm that gives it form. But now we must deal with the greatest battlefield of all, the one where most people lose long before the world ever sees their results. That battlefield is inside your own mind. It is the arena of emotion, distraction, and resistance. You can design a beautiful schedule, write clear goals, and declare a powerful identity. But if you do not learn how to deal with your own feelings, your own impulses, and the invisible force that tries to stop you every time you approach something important, you will live in cycles of starting strong and collapsing back into old patterns. This part of the journey is not about theory. It is about the fight that happens on the days when you know exactly what you should do, and yet every part of you wants to run the other way. If you refuse to understand this part, your consistency will always be fragile, always dependent on good moods and easy circumstances. If you master it, you become dangerous in the best possible way, because you become someone who moves forward regardless of storms. The first truth you must accept is this: emotions are real, but they are not reliable leaders. They are like weather. They shift, change, rise and fall. Some days you wake with energy, confidence and enthusiasm. Other days you wake heavy, doubtful, irritated or tired for reasons you cannot even explain. If your progress depends on catching the right mood, you will never build anything great. The man who is ruled by emotion will always be inconsistent, and the inconsistent will always be ruled by average. This does not mean you must ignore feelings or pretend they do not exist. It means you must place them in their proper position. Feelings are signals, not commands. They can inform you, but they must not govern you. When you build your life on purpose, structure, and identity, you are saying that there is something higher than your current mood that decides what you do with your day. You may feel fear and still act with courage. You may feel tired and still honor the habit. You may feel unmotivated and still take the next step. That is not hypocrisy. That is maturity. The child is ruled by how he feels in the moment. The man or woman of destiny is ruled by what he or she has decided in advance. To do this, you must separate who you are from what you feel. When tiredness shows up, most people say, "I am exhausted," as if the exhaustion is their identity. When doubt shows up, they say, "I am not confident." When discouragement appears, they say, "I am failing." Notice the pattern. They attach the temporary emotion to their permanent identity. Then, because we are wired to act consistently with who we believe we are, they begin to behave in ways that match that emotion. Skip the workout because you are a tired person. Skip the difficult task because you are not confident. Skip the sales call because you are failing anyway. The emotion arrives. The label attaches. The behavior follows. If you are to be consistent, you must break that chain. You must learn to say instead, "I notice tiredness. I notice fear. I notice resistance. But I am still the person who does what he said he would do." There is a world of difference between saying, "I am anxious," and saying, "I feel anxiety." One is identity. The other is an experience passing through. You are not required to obey every feeling that passes through you. Now let us speak of distraction. Because in the world you live in today, distraction is not an accident. It is an industry. There are companies whose entire business model depends on keeping you unproductive, constantly scrolling, constantly reacting, constantly consuming. Your attention has become a currency, and there are many who intend to spend it for you. If you do not make a conscious decision to protect and direct your attention, you will be dragged through each day by systems designed to hijack your focus. This is why we spoke earlier about structure and environment. It is not enough to tell yourself, "I will be focused." You must make practical choices that make focus easier and distraction harder. That might mean silencing notifications during your deep work blocks. It might mean removing certain apps from your phone or limiting when you can access them. It might mean having a dedicated space for work, even if it is just a corner of a room, so that when you sit there, your mind knows why you are there. Every time you remove a source of distraction, you are not just simplifying your environment. You are strengthening your capacity to be consistent. But distraction is not always external. Sometimes the loudest distraction is your own mind. You sit down to work, and suddenly you remember a dozen small tasks you forgot. You recall a past mistake and replay it. You imagine future failures. Your mind begins to wander into fantasies, fears, and fragments. So you reach for your phone, or you get up to do something else. And the pattern repeats. In those moments, you must recognize what is happening. Your mind is trying to escape the discomfort of concentrated effort. Deep work, honest reflection, and important tasks all demand energy. Distraction offers relief. The solution is not to hate yourself for this, but to train yourself like an athlete trains his body. When your mind wanders, notice it without panic. Then, gently but firmly bring it back to the task. Do this not once, but again and again. At first, it will feel exhausting. In time, you are building mental muscle. You are teaching your brain that you, not distraction, are in charge. Now we arrive at resistance, that invisible force that rises every time you move towards something that truly matters. You know it from experience. The moment you decide to start the new habit, write the book, launch the business, change your body, heal the relationship, a strange force appears. Suddenly you feel heavier. Small tasks seem huge. Simple actions feel impossible. You begin to hear a voice inside. You are not ready. This is too hard. You will fail. You can start next week. Resistance is not random. It is a predictable response to growth. Every time you step toward a higher version of yourself, the old version fights to survive. It does not do this with fists. It does this with thoughts, emotions, and urges to procrastinate. If you do not understand that this is part of the process, you will interpret resistance as a sign you should stop. You will say, if this were meant for me, it would be easier. That is not true. The presence of resistance is often evidence that you are aiming at something important. The man who never meets resistance is the man who never attempts anything that threatens his current comfort. So how do you deal with resistance in a way that strengthens your consistency instead of destroying it? First, you must learn to expect it, not fear it. When you decide to take on a new discipline, expect your mind to push back. When you commit to a new standard, expect old habits to scream. When you begin to live from purpose instead of impulse, expect the old identity to protest. When resistance shows up, instead of saying, something is wrong, you say, this is the weight I must lift to grow. An athlete does not complain that the barbell is heavy. He understands that the heaviness is the point. Without heaviness, there is no strength. In the same way, the heaviness you feel when you lean into new habits is simply the weight of your old self being challenged. If you push through, that old self grows weaker and the new self grows stronger. Second, use rules instead of negotiations. Most people try to negotiate with resistance. They say, I will work when I feel a bit more ready. I will start after I check my messages. I will do it later today. This opens the door for endless debate. Your mind is a clever lawyer. If you invite it into court to argue for delay, it will always produce reasons. A person who wants to be consistent must remove certain decisions from debate. He sets rules in advance. Rules like, when it is time to train, I train, whether I feel like it or not. When it is time for deep work, my phone is in another room. When my alarm rings, I get up within 1 minute. These rules are not about punishing yourself. They are about protecting you from your weaker impulses. The fewer negotiations you have with yourself, the more energy you have left for actual work. Third, shrink the starting point. One of the tricks resistance uses is to make the task appear enormous in your mind. Write a book, build a business, get in shape. When you look at the whole mountain, you feel overwhelmed and do nothing. To break this, commit to a very small starting action. Instead of saying, I must write for 2 hours, say, I will write for 10 minutes. Instead of saying, I must do a full hour at the gym, say, I will put on my shoes and begin with 5 minutes. You may end up doing more, but your only promise to yourself is the small start. This is not because small actions alone will give you the life you want, but because small actions destroy resistance. Once you begin, the wall of reluctance starts to crumble. You build a reputation with yourself as someone who starts, not someone who waits for perfect conditions. Over time, those humble beginnings compound into real progress. We must also address the role of validation and the emotional addiction many people have to being seen. In the original message on consistency, we spoke of the man who lives for applause and the man who lives for alignment. The one who needs constant recognition will always be at the mercy of others. When people praise him, he works. When they ignore him or criticize him, he collapses. That is not consistency. That is bondage. If you are to be consistent, you must move away from living for external validation and toward living from internal conviction. You must decide that your work matters because it aligns with your purpose, not because someone likes, shares, or compliments it today. This does not mean you ignore feedback or never care about results. It means those things are not your fuel. Your fuel is the knowledge that you kept your word, that you acted in accordance with who you have chosen to be. That kind of self-respect cannot be bought, and it cannot be given by others. It is earned by facing resistance and doing the work anyway. There will also be seasons when your emotions are not just mildly inconvenient, but deeply heavy. Times of grief, distress, uncertainty, or failure. During those times, you must adjust without abandoning your foundation. You may not be able to maintain your highest level of output. That is all right. Consistency does not demand that every day be equally productive. It demands that you continue to live in alignment with your identity and purpose, even when circumstances hurt. You might reduce the intensity of your habits, but you do not let them disappear. You might shorten your deep work blocks, but you do not surrender them completely. You keep some form of rhythm, even if it is humble. Why? Because that rhythm is what will carry you out of the storm. If in the hardest times you retreat completely into distraction, you will emerge weaker. If in the hardest times you keep one hand on your mission, even lightly, you will emerge stronger. To tie this back to the rest of the message, remember how all of this connects. We began by showing that consistency is the backbone of greatness. Then, we explored identity and purpose as the roots that give strength and direction to that backbone. After that, we examined habits, structure, and the daily rhythm of success as the practical way you arrange your time to support that identity and purpose. Now, by dealing with emotion, distraction, and resistance, we are reinforcing the protective shell around this entire system. Your feelings will fluctuate. Your environment will tempt you, and resistance will challenge you. But if you understand what is happening and respond as a builder rather than a victim, your consistency can survive those attacks. You are not being asked to become a machine who never feels fear or doubt. You are being invited to become a human being whose actions are no longer dictated by those fears and doubts. You are not being asked to eliminate distraction from the world. You are being called to stop offering your focus to every trivial thing that asks for it. You are not being told that resistance will vanish. You are being shown that it can be used as training. When emotion rises, you return to your identity. When distraction calls, you return to your structure. When resistance presses, you return to your purpose. You use each challenge as a reminder of what you have already decided about who you are and what you are here to build. In the next phase of this journey, when we speak about momentum, discipline, and becoming truly unstoppable, understand that everything we say there rests on your willingness to fight this inner battle with courage and intelligence. No external strategy can save the person who insists on surrendering every time feelings shift. But no external obstacle can permanently stop the person who has learned to acknowledge his emotions. redirect his attention, and move through resistance with steady steps. That is the kind of person you are training yourself to become. Not someone who never struggles, but someone who remains in motion even when struggle appears. That is the essence of consistency. That is how you break free from a life of cycles and step into a life of progress. Up to this point, you have come to see that consistency is the backbone of greatness, that identity and purpose supply its strength, that habits and structure give it a daily form, and that mastering emotion, distraction, and resistance protects it from collapse. Now we move to the stage where all of that begins to compound into something far more powerful than isolated effort. That force is momentum. If consistency is you taking step after step, momentum is the wind that begins to push at your back. It is the invisible advantage that seems to make progress easier for some people, while others struggle to move at all. But momentum is not magic, and it is not reserved for the gifted. It is the natural product of disciplined repetition in a unified direction. When you understand it, you stop asking, "Why is life so hard for me?" and start asking, "How do I build and protect this force until it becomes harder to stop than to keep going?" Think of the beginning of any important change in your life. At first, everything feels heavy. The alarm feels heavier. The first workout feels heavier. The first focused hour feels heavier. The first day without numbing distractions feels heavier. You push, and yet the visible results seem small. This is where most people quit. They tell themselves a deadly story. It is not working. What they do not grasp is that in those early days, they are not only building outcomes, they are building momentum. And momentum always takes more energy at the beginning. Pushing a motionless car is hardest in the first inch. Once it begins to roll, each step carries further. Your life works the same way. The first days of discipline are planting and watering with little visible growth. Yet, under the surface, the roots are forming. If you break that process again and again, you never experience the compounding effect. You live only in the hardest part of every change, and never reach the easier part that comes after momentum has been established. So how do you deliberately build momentum instead of waiting and hoping? First, you commit to a streak. A streak is a chain of days where you show up in some form for what matters most. It might be days you train, days you write, days you work on your mission, days you maintain your morning routine. What matters is that each link in the chain is another signal to your mind that this is who you are now. At the beginning, the streak is fragile. Missing a day seems harmless and in isolation. It is, but missing a day also breaks the psychological chain you are building. That is why one of the core rules of momentum is this: if life interrupts you and you break your rhythm, never miss twice. You will have days where illness, crisis, or unavoidable conflict block your plan. Accept that with maturity. But the very next available day, you return. You do not indulge a second break, because 2 missed days start to become a new pattern. The first miss is life. The second is a choice. Momentum is constructed by refusing that second choice over and over until your streak begins to feel too precious to casually break. As your streak grows, your identity shifts. You begin to feel not like someone who is trying to be consistent, but like someone who is consistent. That identity feeds discipline. Many people misunderstand discipline. They think it is a form of harshness, a rigid life where joy dies. In truth, discipline is the arrangement of your life so that your highest values are honored in action, not just in words. Discipline is how you protect your momentum. It is the set of decisions you make before the moment of weakness, so that when weakness comes, you do not have to negotiate with yourself. You already know what to do. You already know what to ignore. You already know what to say no to. Discipline is freedom because it frees you from the slavery of indecision and the constant stress of breaking your own standards. Without discipline, momentum is constantly leaking out through broken promises, wasted time, and emotional storms. With discipline, momentum can build layer upon layer because you have fewer leaks. To see this clearly, look again at the man described in the original message who lives in constant cycles. He gets excited, writes down goals, feels powerful for a few days. Then emotion fades, distraction returns, resistance wins, and he drops back into old habits. Then, after some time, he feels pain about his lack of progress, gets excited again, and repeats the same short cycle. This man never allows momentum to accumulate. He is always starting from zero. Discipline is what extends his cycles. Instead of giving up as soon as he feels tired, he pushes through for one more day. Instead of abandoning his routine when he is discouraged, he does a smaller version and keeps the pattern alive. Instead of restarting from nothing, he maintains some form of activity. Over time, these choices lengthen his streaks. What used to be 3 days of effort becomes a week, then 2, then a month, then a year. The longer the streak, the more momentum he has. The more momentum he has, the easier it becomes to act in alignment with his standards, because he does not want to lose what he has built. This is how discipline and momentum feed one another. Momentum also works on your internal state. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you add a drop to the reservoir of self-trust inside you. At first, the reservoir is low. You have told yourself many times that this time will be different, and then proved yourself wrong. So the inner voice answers every new commitment with suspicion. When you begin to follow through, it does not yet believe you, but consistency silences that inner cynic. After many days of aligned action, you begin to feel something quiet and powerful. I can trust myself. I will not always be perfect, but I will no longer abandon my mission at the first difficulty. That self-trust is one of the most important forms of momentum you can possess. It gives you a calm, steady confidence that is not based on what other people think or on temporary wins. It is based on the evidence of your own life. That is the foundation of being unstoppable. Being unstoppable does not mean you never face obstacles or pain. It means obstacles and pain no longer decide whether you continue. When you are stoppable, any resistance can halt you. A bad day at work, a harsh comment, a small failure, a moment of doubt, and you shut down, abandon your habits, and retreat into comfort. When you are becoming unstoppable, those same events still hurt, but they do not control your behavior. You may feel the sting, you may need a moment to recover, but you return to your rhythm. You keep moving. That is why the original message reminded you that you are either training yourself for success or training yourself for failure every day. Every time you decide to keep going when it would be easier to stop, you train your nervous system to expect persistence from you. One day you look back and realize that what once would have broken you now barely slows you down. To reach that level, you must treat discipline not as a tool you use sometimes, but as a permanent element of your character. Many people use discipline as a sprint. They are disciplined for a short burst to lose weight before an event, to push through a deadline, to impress someone, to obtain a specific reward. Then, as soon as they reach a small result, they relax all standards. They believe the work is over. In reality, the work of discipline begins when the first rewards arrive. It is not difficult to be disciplined when you are desperate and hungry. The true test is whether you can remain disciplined when you are comfortable. When a certain level of success has already been achieved, when the external pressure relaxes, the man who is only disciplined when he is struggling will always return to struggle, because he has not learned how to steward success. The man who retains discipline after the first wins is the one who becomes truly unstoppable. He does not use discipline to reach a peak and then abandon it. He uses discipline to build a plateau that becomes his new normal. In practical terms, this means you must detach discipline from emotion and from outcome. You do not say, "I will be disciplined until I see results." You say, I will be disciplined because this is who I am. You do not say, I will keep my routines as long as it feels exciting. You say, I will keep my routines because they express my purpose. The results will come in their time. The excitement will rise and fall. Discipline remains. This is the mindset of people who quietly build extraordinary lives. While others are chasing the next source of motivation, they are simply doing what they said they would do, day after day. To others, it may look like they have some special power. In truth, they have simply placed discipline above mood and above instant reward. Momentum, once built, must also be directed. There is a danger in becoming someone who can work hard without asking whether he is working on the right things. This is where your earlier work on identity and purpose protects you. Momentum is like a powerful river. It can irrigate fields and bring life, or it can flood and destroy if it is not channeled. When you know what you are building, you can focus your discipline on actions that truly move you closer to that destination. Without purpose, you may be unstoppable in the wrong direction, running quickly toward a life that does not satisfy your deeper values. So, periodically, as part of your nightly or weekly review, ask yourself, where is my momentum currently taking me? Are my habits pushing me toward the future I have chosen? Or am I simply becoming more efficient at running from myself? Adjust accordingly. Discipline plus direction is unstoppable power. Discipline without direction is exhausting. Another key element of becoming unstoppable is learning how to restart without shame. Even the most disciplined person will have days or seasons where momentum slows. An illness, a major life change, an unexpected crisis can interrupt even the best structure. The stoppable person uses these events as a reason to stay down. He says, I lost everything I built. So what is the point? The unstoppable person sees them differently. He understands that momentum has a memory. Even if his routines are disrupted for a time, he still carries the identity, the knowledge, and the skill built during his previous streaks. When he returns, he may feel rusty, but he does not treat himself as a beginner. He treats himself as someone resuming a path, not someone starting from nothing. That mindset allows him to rebuild momentum far faster the second, third, and fourth time than he did the first. He is not ashamed of the interruption. He is focused on the recommitment. You must also surround your momentum with boundaries. The world will not naturally respect your discipline. People will ask you to sacrifice your priorities for their convenience. Invitations will come that sound flattering, but pull you away from deep work into shallow distraction. Opportunities will appear that look exciting, but fracture your focus. If you say yes to everything, you will eventually say no to the very consistency that created your progress. To be unstoppable, you must become comfortable with being misunderstood. You must be willing to say, I cannot attend that. I cannot stay up that late. I cannot take on that extra project, because I have made a prior commitment to my own mission. This is not selfishness. It is stewardship. You are protecting the momentum that supports your family, your purpose, and your long-term impact. People who do not understand this will call you rigid. In time, the results will speak for you. Finally, understand that becoming unstoppable is not about constant aggression. It is about constant alignment. This includes rest. True discipline includes disciplined recovery. An exhausted body and a burned-out mind cannot sustain momentum indefinitely. Part of your structure must include sleep, moments of stillness, and times where you step back to gain perspective. The difference between the disciplined and the undisciplined is that the disciplined person rests on purpose, not as an escape. He does not use rest to run away from his responsibilities. He uses rest to renew his ability to meet them. He chooses when to pause, rather than being forced to collapse. That is also part of being unstoppable. You remain in charge of your pace instead of being broken by your own excess. When you look across everything we have explored, you can see how each layer supports the next. Consistency is the backbone. Identity and purpose are the roots. Habits and structure are the daily form. Mastery of emotion. Distraction and resistance is the protection. Momentum and discipline are the compounding power. Becoming unstoppable is the natural outcome when all of these are practiced over time. You are no longer living as a creature of impulse, tossed around by feelings and circumstances. You are living as a builder, day by day, brick by brick, aligning who you are, what you believe, how you structure your time, and how you respond to inner and outer pressure from the outside. This may look like luck to those who did not witness the daily decisions. You will know it was something very different. It was the quiet, relentless choice to keep moving in the direction of your purpose until no force, internal or external, could easily knock you from that path. That is momentum. That is discipline. That is what it means to become unstoppable. Up until now, we have spoken much about what you do, about effort, about habits, about daily structure, about the discipline required to build momentum and stay the course when emotion, distraction, and resistance try to pull you away. But there is a higher level of this entire journey, and it is the true destination of everything we have been building. It is the point where consistency is no longer something you are trying to maintain, but something you have become. It is the point where your actions are no longer temporary efforts, but expressions of a deeply forged character. And it is the point where that character begins to extend its influence far beyond your own life into something we call legacy. This final stage is not measured in a week, a month, or even a single year. It is measured in the way your presence, your standards, and your example continue to shape others long after the initial excitement has faded. The great tragedy of modern life is that most people never reach this stage, not because it is impossible, but because they stop at the level of temporary effort. They work hard for a season and then retreat. They push when they feel inspired and collapse when they feel tired. They never remain in the process long enough for their actions to crystallize into unshakable character. If you understand what we are about to cover and are willing to live it, you will not belong to that majority. Let us begin by drawing a clear distinction between effort and character. Effort is what you do occasionally. Character is what you do consistently. Effort is the burst of energy you apply when you are motivated. Character is the pattern that remains when motivation is gone. Temporary effort is you waking early for a week because you are excited about a new plan. Unshakable character is you waking early year after year because you have become the kind of person who honors his commitments to himself. Temporary effort is you studying diligently for a month because an exam or a deadline is near. Character is you being a diligent learner across your entire life because you have decided that growth is part of who you are. Most people judge themselves by their strongest days. Character is built by what you do on your weakest days. When you act in alignment with your standards when it is hardest, you are writing that standard into your being. You are telling your subconscious, this is not something I do only when it is easy. This is part of me. In the original message on consistency, you heard that you are always becoming something. Every time you snooze your vision, you are becoming someone. Every evening you delay your dream, you are becoming someone. Every moment you resist the work, you are becoming someone. That was not poetic language. It was a sober description of the law by which your character is formed. Character is not built in a single dramatic decision. It is built in thousands of quiet choices, repeated so often that they harden into who you are. The person who constantly chooses comfort over commitment is not merely experiencing a series of unrelated lazy days. He is forming the character of a man who cannot be relied on when things matter. The person who repeatedly keeps his word when it costs him convenience is not just having a few disciplined moments. He is becoming the kind of person others instinctively trust. Over time, these invisible deposits accumulate until they show up as something visible and undeniable. People say of such a person, he is solid, she is dependable, he is different, she is grounded. What they are really recognizing is that the person has crossed the bridge from sporadic effort to stable character. This is why the earlier parts of this journey emphasized identity so strongly. Identity is the soil. Consistency is the seed. Character is the tree. At first, when you choose new habits and new standards, they feel foreign. You may even feel like an imposter, because your history does not yet match your intentions. That is where temporary effort lives. Temporary effort says, I will try this for a while and see what happens. Character says, this is who I am now, and I will act accordingly until my life reflects it. The bridge between those two is consistency. Every time you show up for your habits and your structure in spite of emotion and resistance, you lay another plank on that bridge. Eventually, you look back and realize that you are no longer standing where you began. You have crossed into a new identity that is reinforced by years of practice. You do not have to force every action anymore, because your nervous system, your self-image, and your routines all agree about who you are. This does not mean the journey becomes effortless, but it does mean you have become stable. Unshakable character is not a character that never feels tempted, never feels tired, never feels doubt. It is a character that has been tested and proven in the presence of those feelings. Think of steel. It is not called strong because it has never faced pressure, but because it has been heated, hammered and cooled in a way that makes it resistant to breaking. Your character is forged in the same way. The days when you want to quit but continue. The seasons when you are discouraged but still act. The periods where others misunderstand you, but you remain loyal to your purpose. Those are the furnaces in which your character is hardened. Most people avoid these furnaces. They retreat at the first sign of fire. They say, this is too much. It should not be this hard. Maybe this is a sign I should stop. In doing so, they escape temporary discomfort but also forfeit the strength they might have gained. You, if you mean to build unshakable character, must view these moments differently. You must see them as training. You are not being picked on by life. You are being invited to grow into someone who can carry more. As your character solidifies, your consistency stops being primarily about achieving personal goals and becomes about honoring who you are. You still pursue outcomes. Of course, you want to improve your finances, your health, your relationships, your contribution. But deeper than that, you are now living to maintain integrity between your inner standards and your outer actions. When you break that integrity, you feel a deeper kind of pain. Not just the frustration of missing a target, but the discomfort of violating your own nature. This is a powerful place to be, because it means your greatest motivation is not external pressure, but inner alignment. You are no longer acting primarily to avoid guilt or chase applause. You are acting to remain who you have chosen to become. That kind of internal drive is far more stable than any external incentive. Now, let us extend our vision beyond character into legacy. Character is who you are. Legacy is what who you are does to others. In the original transcript, you were reminded that you are not here simply to exist, but to build, to create, to dominate your own destiny. You also heard that consistency is not only about results, but about the man who is no longer tossed around by life. The man who has earned the right to lead. That is where legacy begins. Legacy is not just money you leave behind or achievements written in a biography. Legacy is the imprint your presence leaves on minds, hearts, and standards. Every day, your level of consistency is teaching those around you something. You are either showing them what it looks like to live in cycles of start and stop, or showing them what it looks like to stay the course. You are either normalizing excuses or normalizing responsibility. You are either passing down the habit of procrastination or the habit of follow-through. Think of the people who shaped you most. Often, it was not their speeches that changed you, but the way they lived. Perhaps there was a parent or mentor who always kept their word, and without knowing it, you absorbed the belief that promises matter. Perhaps there was someone in your life who never finished anything, and you absorbed the belief that dreams are fragile and likely to fail. In both cases, legacy was at work. They were training you by their consistency or inconsistency. In the same way, you are training those who observe you. Your children, if you have them, are learning from how you handle difficulty far more than from what you say about difficulty. Your friends and colleagues may never tell you, but they are drawing conclusions about what is possible based on the example you set. When you begin to see that your consistency is not just about you, but about the standards you are setting for others, your view of discipline deepens. It is no longer just self-improvement. It is stewardship of influence. The bridge from temporary effort to legacy is built when you stop asking only, "What do I want to achieve?" and start asking, "Who do I want to become for the sake of those I will impact?" Temporary effort is content with short bursts that change circumstances. Unshakable character understands that the ultimate goal is to change lives. Beginning with your own, legacy asks, "What example will my life give to the next generation?" Will they see a person who talked about goals but never embodied them? Or a person whose daily conduct confirmed his words? When you look at your habits, your schedule and your responses to pressure through this lens, everything becomes more meaningful. Saying no to distraction is not only about finishing a project, it is about forging a pattern that the people connected to you can safely imitate. Showing up for your routines when you feel low is not only about personal growth, it is about proving to those who watch that emotions do not have to be your master. There is also a sobering reality here. Legacy is inevitable. You will leave one, whether you intend to or not. The question is not, will I leave a legacy? But what kind of legacy will I leave? If you live in constant inconsistency, people will remember you as someone they could not depend on. Someone whose word meant little. Someone whose potential was never fully realized. They may not say it out loud, but the memory will remain. If, on the other hand, you live with disciplined consistency over years, people will remember you as someone steady, someone they could trust, someone whose life had weight. Even if your name is never famous, your influence will echo in the people you touched. The child who learns from your example of perseverance, the co-worker who raises his own standards after watching yours, the friend who believes in change because he saw you change. These are part of your legacy. Consistency is the tool by which you carve that legacy into reality. All of this brings us back to the core truth that has been woven through the entire message. Consistency is the bridge between who you are and who you can become. At the start of this journey, you heard that you are either training yourself for success or training yourself for failure every day, and that your patterns are the proof of what you are becoming. Now, at this deeper level, you can see that consistency is also the bridge between what you experience in your own life and what you will ultimately pass on to others. Temporary effort can produce moments of success, but it cannot sustain them, and it cannot pass them on. Only character can do that. Character built by daily, disciplined, aligned action in the face of emotion, distraction, and resistance. To make this practical, ask yourself a different set of questions as you go forward. Not just, what do I want to accomplish in the next 90 days? But, what kind of person do I want to be in the next 10 years? Not just, how quickly can I get this result? But, what habits and standards must I install so that this result can be maintained and multiplied? Not just, how can I look successful? But, how can I become the man or woman whose success is simply an honest reflection of who they are? These questions lift your eyes from temporary effort to long-term character. They remind you that the real win is not a single achievement, but the transformed self that becomes capable of producing achievement consistently. As you live this out, understand that the process will sometimes feel slow. Building unshakable character and meaningful legacy is not a practice. It happens over years of choosing discipline instead of distraction, purpose instead of drift, alignment instead of contradiction. There will be days when it seems no one sees your effort, when progress feels invisible. Those are the days you must remember that you are no longer working only for external validation. You are working to honor the identity you have chosen and the legacy you are building. On those days, you keep going, not because of how you feel, but because of who you are. In the end, when people look at your life, they will mislabel it. They will say, you were lucky, that you had a natural gift, that things somehow worked out for you. Let them talk. You will know the truth. You will know that what they call luck was the compounded effect of thousands of consistent choices made when no one was watching. You will know that what they call natural gift was character refined through repeated tests. You will know that what they call things working out was your willingness to stay on the bridge between who you were and who you could become until you crossed it completely. That is the destination of consistency. Not just a better schedule, not just a few goals achieved, but a life that stands as proof that a human being, through deliberate, disciplined, daily action, can transform themselves and, in doing so, leave a mark that endures. That is unshakable character. That is legacy. And that, if you choose it, is what your life can become. And if this message has spoken to the deepest part of you, if it has stirred that voice within that knows you are meant for more, then I invite you to stay with us on this path. Subscribe to the channel, not for entertainment, but for alignment, for accountability, for a steady voice that reminds you of who you are becoming. And if you wish to go deeper, to understand these principles with greater clarity and apply them with greater precision, explore the full collection of teachings here. Your transformation is not an event. It is a practice. Stay connected to it. Grow with it. Walk with it. And let this be one of the places that strengthens your journey.